My name is Danielle Stalling, and I am a wife of 10 years. I have 3 kids. I stay home with my kids. I homeschool all 3 of them, middle school, elementary school, and preschool. I am a small group leader for sophomore girls now at my church and some middle school. What has the Lord done to get me where I am? Basically, focusing on being godly in all areas of my life would probably be the most well-rounded way to think about that. And for me, it has definitely been learning what His expectations are, but really challenging that against how I was raised and the examples that I grew up watching, because I was not raised in a Christian home or environment. I didn't even have friends that went to church. I had no godly examples. I don't want to say no godly examples, but definitely none I paid attention to. If they were, they didn't influence me really at all. So for me, it's been kind of like erasing all of those habits and lifestyles and challenging, wow, I had no idea that this was a poor way to live. But also living out those poor decisions and seeing how empty they are, or seeing how utterly useless they are. And then as I would incorporate things, I would see how well that they really worked and made, our lives healthy. For Cliff and I, when we got married, I actually was really close with my aunt. Well, I still am, but she actually asked me to not send out the invitations because our relationship was so unhealthy. She's like, you need to think about this. And so for Cliff and I, growing in godliness has been it's sink or swim, because we've had different periods in our life where it was failing so badly. If we didn't do something differently, it wasn't going to work. And so their influence in particular is probably what steered us towards the Lord. I mean, we are feathers in their caps before the Lord, and just, we're jewels in their crown they led us to Him. But it was because of their example. So just like what you're trying to do in seeing others' example, their example in marriage and in life drew us to them. I can definitely see, looking back, where even though I was unsaved, God was, pursuing me and trying to draw me in. And sometimes I listened and most times I didn't. But yeah, just when we would actually make a healthy decision, we're like, wow, that worked out so well. And, a failing marriage at the beginning, wanting to make that better, or different, issues with our kids, wanting to see them healthy, just forced us towards that. Godly characteristics of a woman that kind of stand out to me. I think probably one of the first ones that come to my mind is humility and self-control. I feel like with humility, kind of obviously putting others first and not having to be either the center of attention or always be right, or allowing someone else to shine and applauding that. For you to see a friend excel, especially in an area that you want to excel in, and doing very well, and being able to applaud them and get behind them, I think that's a huge one, because selfishness is so strong in humans and so deep that that's a really hard one to overcome. And self-control, that would enter a lot of areas, but definitely like just a woman that can be in a conversation that could easily go towards gossip or could easily go towards bashing other people, and watching a woman not take that route for me is a huge one. Because first of all, gossip is a huge weakness of mine, and probably most women would not be able to disagree with that. But it's just so easy to knock other people down or talk poorly about someone. And if I'm in a conversation with a woman and I know she knows something about what we're talking about and doesn't add to the conversation in a mature, wise way, that knocks points for me. You know, that's like, wow. You know, and it inspires me to know that I can be capable, you know, of that. Probably another one is confidence. I really admire and love to see a woman who is confident in who she is. You know, that can bow out of something gracefully and be like, oh, that is not for me, and laugh it off, or mess up and laugh it off. I have a friend that is so goofy, and she's just so confident in that. Not prideful, but she's just such a joy to be around because she doesn't care what she looks like, and she loves to make people laugh. And I just admire that so much in her, because too often I'm too uptight, you know, to be like that. But it can take so many different forms. Some of the things I had to overcome to become a more godly woman was definitely, well, kind of like I had said before, super unhealthy habits, finding out even what that looked like, and just confidence was one. Like, I think for me, a huge one, even just in the last year, has been knowing who I am in Christ. You know, you talked about being fearfully and wonderfully made, and those kind of scriptures are just so easy to breeze by and be like, oh, yeah. But I feel like I have learned there are things that you know in your head, and then there are things that you know in your heart. And learning those scriptures, which really learning just God's perspective and his view of me, and then challenging my view of myself, has been life-changing, because they don't line up. Almost never do they ever line up. So, you know, looking at scriptures and thinking about God's thoughts of me and God's love of me and how important I am to him, and the things that he wants to do through me, is like, I just would have counted myself out, you know? Yeah. Just definitely overcoming those insecurities. And really, I don't know that I have, but it's more of me just trusting that it's not about me. You know, he just talks about, you know, Paul talks about how if you needed the greatest example of a godly man, he's it. And I wrote in my journal one time, I don't struggle with that. I struggle with, let's find the worst example of a godly person, and I'm it, you know? And how is God supposed to use that? You know, Paul just was like, well, I'm this and I'm that, and I have all of these things that I can brag about. And I'm like, no, I don't have that. You know, I have a list of things that I have completely and utterly screwed up. and that God has just totally redeemed, and I can't take credit for any of it. And I can only have confidence in him because I started my life into my 20s even seeing what I'll do on my own. And it's a mess. But now from 20s to now, I've seen what God will do. And it's like, oh my goodness, I can't do anything different. You know, the portrait I painted of my life and the portrait that he has painted of my life are just not even they're not even the same. Mine was like all dark, dismal, ugly colors, and his are just bright and amazing and beautiful. And so that's what I want people to know, is that, his word is true. It's so true. Advice I could have used at your age, I guess we'll go that route, is probably a lot of the things you hear me say all the time. But just, knowing who you are and not wanting to focus on everyone else. I love that you are calling this fearfully and wonderfully made, because we are all so unique. But you see it on the posters, and you see it on the pins, and you see it everywhere. Don't copy someone else. There's only one like you. But not many people live like that. And for me, I didn't learn who I really was until I was in my 20s, because I was just so busy focusing on the wrong things to fill me up. So, not that I would have listened. I like to say that I would, but I definitely would have loved to have known and listened to knowing, God has a plan for you, and he has a fulfilling life for you, and you were made for a purpose that no one else was made to do. I hope that would have inspired me, because the life that I was living at your age was so empty, and I was focused on all the wrong things. To be a godly woman in leadership, probably for me is just like parenting, I guess. I kind of am a natural leader anyway. My personality is kind of dominating, so it just fits to be a leader. But I have such a passion to want you to not struggle like I struggled, or your peers and the girls in small group to not struggle, my daughters to not struggle like I struggled. And I have no qualms about taking the stuff that I've dealt with and say, look, don't, I know what I'm talking about, don't do this. I definitely think to be a godly leader, first of all, it takes having that walk already, but it's being a servant. It's not about me being a leader. Jesus set the example that he came to serve. And so my heart and my goal is to serve you, or to serve, our girls in small group, in whatever form that takes.
Definitely, like what you said, being a servant first. And I think you can definitely tell with leaders if that's their heart in it, because if not, it'll be them up front the whole entire time and them doing everything. But I think something that you do very well is I think definitely when we were younger, you let us kind of get it out. There were some youth groups where it was just talking about what everyone's going through, which at the time was kind of like, oh my goodness, can we talk about Jesus? But then, like, towards the end, it would all tie back. You'd tie it back to what the Lord is doing and how he can use that, or to your experiences. So I think that's one thing that a leader definitely needs to be is first just willing to listen and willing to let somebody go on and talk, and then just taking the time to think about that and bring the Lord into it.
Yeah.
Instead of going with their own agenda.
Yeah.
I think that something that I struggle with is being flexible and not having control. So I think that a leader, one, needs to be comfortable being in control, but also comfortable giving that up.
Yeah.
So I think they need to be constantly pursuing the Lord and then just allowing just to sit there and wait.
Yeah.
And be patient with who they're talking to or who they're leading, but also with the Lord.
Yeah. But a couple of years ago, I really felt kind of like you are, stirred up in what does a godly woman look like? And, what does that look like for me? I think for me, the Lord has really laid on my heart being practical. Like, I can't wait to get to heaven, but what do I need today to get through today? What does that look like as a mom today? What does that look like as a wife today, or as a youth group leader today? I need to get through this moment. And so a couple years ago, the Lord led me through Proverbs 31, which is a very common chapter of a godly woman. But what the Lord had me do is I read through that chapter, and I made questions for my husband out of that chapter. And I literally sat down with him one night and said, like if the verse talked about being productive with your time, I sat down with him and I said, how productive do you think I am with my time? Like specifically every verse, I asked the Lord, okay, what is this verse? How does this verse apply to me in 2000, whatever it was at that time, 2016.
Yeah.
Obviously it was written a long time ago. What form does this verse take on for me in my life? So for you, that would look different than me.
Yeah.
And then to ask the Lord, and then ask, for me it was my husband, who's the most influential person for me in knowing how I walk and live day to day. But for you, that could be, probably your parent.
Yeah.
But even for, anybody watching this, it doesn't have to be Proverbs 31, but that's definitely a renowned chapter for that. And it was very eye-opening because I prefaced it with, I'll only grow from this if you're honest with me. And, and I wrote down his answers. It was like an interview. And I don't think he knew kind of what to think about that. But that was a very growing experience for me to kind of take that and meditate on the responses of that, and to kind of get a mirror of myself and be like, well, I may think I'm doing really well in that area, but does this person that I'm talking to? I was talking about
Confidence.
Oh, confidence, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I don't think I finished, but I'm sure I said enough, because I typically do.